Max Weber's life was full of contradictions and tensions. He was a top student from a Prussian aristocratic family, but he never married, and he had close contacts with academic leaders of the same sex. He was a rational social scientist, but he talked with the ghost of Nietzsche in the middle of the night. He accurately predicted the iron cage dilemma of modern society, but he himself was deeply involved in a mental breakdown. This dual personality of genius and madman made him the most recognizable ideological totem in the 20th century. His study is filled with smoke all year round, coffee cups are piled on the desk, and a painting of Van Gogh's Starry Night hangs on the wall. This melancholy knight always gets up suddenly at midnight and writes frantic notes on manuscript paper. According to his widow's recollection, Weber murmured to himself before his death, "We are all Sisyphus, but at least my stone is real." This paranoid questioning of the ultimate question always shrouded his thoughts in a halo of mysticism. In 1864, Max Weber was born into a political family in Erfurt, Germany. The strong political atmosphere in his family seemed to be an invisible net that enveloped him, exposing him to various political activities and intellectual elites from an early age. His growth trajectory is like a legendary academic adventure. During the years when he studied law at the University of Heidelberg and the University of Berlin, he eagerly absorbed the nutrients of knowledge. At the age of 25, he obtained a doctorate in law with his outstanding talent. He stood at the forefront of academics at a young age and became a professor at the University of Freiburg and the University of Heidelberg. However, fate played a cruel joke on him. Starting in 1898, a mysterious neurosis stalked him like a demon, forcing him to temporarily bid farewell to the academic stage. During the long period of cultivation, what kind of struggle and transformation his inner world went through is still a topic of curiosity and inquiry. For years later, he miraculously returned to academics, but the shadow of depression always followed him until his death in Munich in 1920. His life was full of ups and downs. In Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism, Weber made a shocking conclusion. Calvinism's predestination theory gave birth to a unique vocation view, and believers proved that they were God's chosen people by working hard to make money. This logical chain that binds religious salvation to economic success completely subverts the orthodox narrative that the economic base determines the superstructure. Interestingly, contemporary Chinese entrepreneurs' admiration for the Confucian businessman's spirit is just like the mirror image of the Protestant ethics of 100 years ago projected onto the Eastern land. Weber wrote in 1918 that the bureaucratic state of the future will turn people into precise gears. At this moment, China's major internet companies are weaving digital iron cages using KPI algorithms. The characteristics of impersonal authority in his writings are vividly displayed in the 996 work system and involution culture. What is even more ironic is that the reform of bureaucracy with Chinese characteristics, the efficiency myth of concentrating efforts to do big things, is still essentially a variant experiment within the framework of Weber's theory. When Chinese city skylines are cut into geometric shapes by glass curtain walls, when involution and lying flat become social hot words, Weber's warning of instrumental rationality swallowing up the meaning of life becomes more and more harsh. In Taking Academics as a Career, he warns scholars, don't ask about remuneration, but ask about mission. This resonates wonderfully with the value shift of young Chinese people to escape from 996 and pursue little luck. The three kinds of legitimacy rule proposed by Weber tradition, charisma, legal principles refract the spectrum of China's political transformation like a prism. In the early days of reform and opening up, crossing the river by feeling for the stones relied on the personal charisma of leaders. Deng Xiaoping's speech during his southern tour established the legal foundation of the market economy. The new era emphasizes institutional confidence and the creative transformation of traditional culture. This dynamic evolution just confirms his assertion that the power structure always swings between rationality and irrationality. Interestingly, the acceptance of him by Chinese academic circles is strangely polarized. In the 1980s, intellectual elites regarded him as an Enlightenment prophet, while after the 1990s, some criticized him for his elitist tendencies. This controversy just confirms the complexity of Weber's thought. As he himself said, "Truth is a dazzling light, but we need to use it to illuminate the fog." Max Weber spent his life proving that real thinkers are never footnotes of the times, but the forerunners of history. As he lay on the hospital bed in his Berlin apartment, with snow falling outside the window and Van Gogh's Starry Sky seeming to spin on the wall, this last classicist might have foreseen that our time is still wandering through the labyrinth of his thoughts. For China, Weber is neither a sage's book in the palm of his hand nor a scarecrow to be defeated, but a multiprism that reflects the dilemma of its own civilization, looking for answers to Eastern modernity in the eternal tension between tradition and modernity, efficiency and fairness, centralization and decentralization. Anything that cannot be done with enthusiasm is not worthwhile. The backwardness of a country is first of all the backwardness of the elite, and the sign of the backwardness of the elite is to laugh at the backwardness of the people. The soul cannot produce anything of value without being tempered by the fire of loneliness and misery. Human beings are animals suspended in a web of meaning that we have spun. The political immaturity of backward nations lies precisely in the fact that they often suppress the growth of inner strength in pursuit of external strength. If you can't get a sense of intoxication from learning, stay away from it. Experts have no soul, and hedonists have no heart. Modernization is a process of deglamorization. The key to the effectiveness of charisma depends on the recognition of it by those who submit to authority. Bureaucrats naturally prefer parliament that is ill-informed, and therefore weak, at least because this ignorance of the parliament serves the bureaucrat's own interests. The modern state's monopoly on the use of violence is as essential a feature of the modern state as its rational agency and continued functioning. The more fully developed bureaucracy is, the more dehumanized it becomes, the more completely it succeeds in eliminating from official duties the incalculable elements of love, hatred, and all purely personal and irrational emotions. This is its special quality recognized by capitalism. Once an organization is established, vested interests in the institution public servants, officials tend to perpetuate it or change it away from its original intent. Power means any opportunity to carry out one's will even in the face of opposition within certain social relationships, no matter what basis this opportunity is based on. In this world, nothing is perfect. Charismatic rule is based on the charisma of heroes. Once this charisma disappears, rule is often unsustainable. The development of bureaucracy makes everything calculable and predictable, but at the same time it loses its human touch. Identity groups are a form of social differentiation based on people's social status, reputation, and lifestyle. Economic behavior is not only the pursuit of interests, but also an expression of value. Politics is not only a game of power, but also a play of responsibility. History is a pile of ashes, but there is residual warmth deep within the ashes. Social change is inevitable, but we can choose how to respond. Morality is not only a norm, but also an inner conscience. The purpose of education is not to cultivate tools, but to shape complete people. Love is becoming more and more complex in modern society, but it is also becoming more and more precious. Suicide is just a selfish and cowardly choice that will only bring more pain to the people who love me. Strength is taking action, even if you have 100 reasons not to act. Political power should be subject to legal and moral constraints to ensure that it is not abused. True courage is not being fearless, but moving forward in the face of fear. What a teacher should do is not to act as a spiritual leader for students, not to instill a clear-cut belief, but to try his best to be intellectually honest and to determine facts, logical relationships, numerical relationships, or the internal structure of cultural values. A pulpit where there are no opponents and no room for debate is no place for prophets and demagogues. It is precisely because people pursue the impossible that the possible becomes possible. Democracy is a political system that allows the people to participate in political decision-making through elections and freedom of speech. The power of the Father and the subservience of the Son basically need to be based on an actual blood relationship, although it is usually based on such a relationship. Power is always related to the possibility of dominating others. There are 3 types of authority: traditional, charismatic, and legal. Politicians who only pursue short-term interests will destroy the country's future. If intellectuals compromise with power, they lose the meaning of their existence. Power and responsibility must be proportional, and unchecked power will inevitably corrupt. The greater the power, the more moral restraint is needed, otherwise it will lead to the abyss. A government is an institution that has a monopoly on the legitimate use of violence. Power means the opportunity to carry out one's will even in the face of opposition in a social relationship. Behind any undertaking, there must be an invisible spiritual force,